Because to me, like, that's why I have a hard time speaking on this, because I feel like I never tried to be like that agreeable person.
Okay. So this book, I really feel helped me understand boundaries a little bit more and made it clear. So I think let's jump right in. I think what I want to start with, if you don't mind, is a definition of what a boundary is.
Yes, define it. Define it.
Make sure we're all on the same page.
Everyone and myself can understand what you're talking about.
Amazing. So, okay, it's very, and I'm reading this off the page because I want to make sure that I'm saying it properly. But boundaries, and I think this is the key, is it's about your behavior, not theirs. Okay, so the boundary is, I will not accept your opinion on the decisions I will make. Okay?
Ooh, okay.
So it's not about having someone change their behaviors. It's about you positioning yourself and understanding what you will allow. So I'm going to give a good example. Okay. An easy example for someone to, for everyone to
enlighten me.
Okay. So someone's smoking.
Yeah.
You're not a smoker. So you're like, you know what? I don't want to inhale secondhand smoke, let's say. Your boundary is not, hey, stop smoking. That would be controlling the other person's actions. The boundary is, if you smoke or when you smoke, I will decide to not be around you. Do you see the difference?
Yeah.
So you're not dictating to someone else what to do, or you're not telling them what to do. You are setting that boundary for yourself, and it's your actions. And the thing is, someone can't say, well, I want you to be around me when I'm smoking.
Yeah,
no.
that was gonna be my first thought of that. Okay, how I think the hardest part is it might not be setting boundaries. It's about how people react to your boundaries.
Exactly. And one of the things that this book really goes into detail about is it's uncomfortable to set a boundary. It's uncomfortable. Imagine yourself telling someone, hey, a smoker, let's say, hey, when you're smoking, I'm not going to be around you. That's awkward. Like, that's right. Like, how do you do that?
I think it depends, like, what you value and what you don't value. Because like in this case, for me, like, I just really don't want to be around smoke.
That's it.
That I really wouldn't have a problem setting that boundary.
Okay, interesting.
So I think my first thought about boundaries is like, what is the boundary about? I think that could be an interesting thing to explore about, okay, if we're setting extreme boundaries, like things that are very like black and white, like you smoke or you don't smoke, versus like very subtle behaviors or very like ways of thinking, or like that. I think that maybe that's what you're referring to, and like that get harder.
Well, yes. And actually I have a question for you on that. I think when it comes to boundaries, they're like, for me, I try to impose a boundary on, or enforce a boundary around the way I get spoken to, let's say. But I do have an issue. Like, if someone speaks to me in a way that I don't agree with, I have difficulty enforcing that boundary and saying, hey, I don't accept the way I'm being spoken to right now.
Like, about what they're saying, or like, is it tone?
Like, how, let's say they're being disrespectful towards me.
Okay, because you're not talking about like them disagreeing with you.
No.
Okay.
Of course not. But let's say someone's disrespecting me. I don't tolerate that. That's a boundary. I will not be disrespected by anyone.
Okay.
But I have a hard time enforcing that boundary. And I feel like that's where I feel like it's uncomfortable. I don't know if you would agree. Like, it would be uncomfortable for me to say, hey, I don't accept being spoken to that way. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't come naturally for me to say that.
Why do you think that? What doesn't come naturally?
I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out, to be quite honest with you. I feel like I'm someone who, I always have something to say. Like, I'm not like, I don't shy away from situations. But when it comes to being disrespected by other people in the way they're speaking to me, or the tone they're using, or they're being condescending, it's like all of a sudden I lose my voice. It's like I can't speak anymore.
Is it that, like, the same situation where, like, let's say someone would cut you in line in the store, would you say something?
That's a good question. I feel like probably not.
You wouldn't say anything? Because that goes probably hand in hand with what you just said, right? About setting that boundary. It's like someone's kind of disrespecting you.
Listen, Jake, I never said I was good at setting boundaries, okay? Like, that's the point here.
I'm just saying, I'm just like so curious about,
like, okay.
About
like,
what's going on there. Because
it depends.
Is that like a people pleasing thing?
But that's it. Honestly, I don't have that answer for you.
Okay.
I'm still trying to figure it out.
Okay.
Like, honestly, had this conversation 2 days ago with my boyfriend. I was like, I don't know why I am like this. I should be able to set my bound. Like, I'm pretty like strong-minded, and you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's why I'm so like curious about your answers to this, because I know who you are, and I know like you're very firm, you know, in like what you stand for and what you believe. So I'm like, I'm so intrigued by this, like, oh, interesting. When it comes time to, let's say I don't tolerate this, like you shy away.
But it's interesting that you mentioned the people pleaser, because I've never looked at it in that way.
But like,
but
why?
You might be helping me here get to why I'm being like this.
Because I feel like if you're not going to stand up for yourself, it's just like, oh, like, I don't want to ruffle any feathers, you know, like I don't want to create any conflict. I just want to like I want to be that agreeable person.
That's really interesting.
You know, because to me, like, that's why I have a hard time speaking on this, because I feel like I never tried to be like that agreeable person.
Okay.
And I don't think I've been in many scenarios where I felt like, oh, I need to like
set a boundary,
set a clear boundary, just because it's just, I live my life the way I live it. And I never felt that like, oh, I'm being, you know, I'm being put in a situation where I need to like enforce this boundary. But I think I have conflicted with other people's boundaries. I think with the way I am.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't think that if I look at my, like you said, boundaries are about us, not about other people. But I can confirm that I think that the way I am as a person, I probably I created conflict for other people in their boundaries.
Really?
Because of the way I am. And I say people pleasing because I know a lot of the times like people want to be, like I said, be agreeable. They don't want to create that conflict with you. But looking back on certain situations, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I think that maybe that person would have liked to put their foot down, or like, you know, felt like they disrespected. I have to be honest with myself, right? Like there's things that I know about myself that like, oh yeah, in certain situations I look back and I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said things this way, or shouldn't have expressed myself this way. And I realized that looking back, when you talk about boundaries, it makes me realize that, oh yeah, okay, this person never really told me.
And that's the thing too. It's like, you can't guess.
You can't guess.
The person has to kind of tell you. If not, how do you know what's up? Because what's a boundary for someone else is not necessarily a boundary for me, let's say, right? Like two people don't have necessarily the same boundaries. So I think it's important that we're clear, but then that's where it can get uncomfortable. Like I was saying, right? Like when people disrespect me in a certain way, like, or they'll speak to me in a certain way, like I've been in, you know, a situation at work, at a previous employer where, you know, I was spoken to in certain ways that I totally did not accept. And what did I do? I just sat there and let the person keep talking to me. And then I hung up and I was like, this is unacceptable being spoken to this way. But why was I not able to tell the person in the moment? And that was a boundary for me, but maybe someone else would have been like, whatever, it's no big deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. That's your own boundary. But also like when the hard thing with that is that like, let's be real. Like there's the social situations come into play, right? Like you're not how you are, let's say in a closed room, right? When you're in a closed room, you're looking at the situation, you're like, I would have told them off, like I would have done this, and that. Then you get into you go outside, right? You get into social situations, like that's not how life necessarily goes, you know, like everything you planned in your head, everything you're gonna say to this person, like that might not be what comes out of your mouth, right?
My favorite is when I tell my boyfriend a story and he's like, you should have said this and you should have said that, and I'm like, dude,
but should have is easy, right? Like you're not
there, like it's exactly. It's
also
easy to talk.
You don't have like the same implication in the situation as I do, right? Like this is let's say my boss, this is my partner, or this is my family member, whatever, like so it's easy for me to sit here and be like, you should have, I would have said that. Easy, like what are you talking about? Like, you know, so
good point.
But boundaries are super interesting because I think it's super important from like to have them, super hard to enforce.
Yes.
And it's just like, I think I really like to like flip the scenario and really put myself in somebody else's shoes and think about, am I breaking their boundary, or am I conflicting with their boundaries? Because I remember when I started, let's say, having deeper conversations with people.
Yeah.
And a lot of times when you have deeper conversations with people, it comes with I'm not going to say trauma dump, but like you share things that are like not always the most positive things. Like you share your like darkest reflections, like things like that, right, with people. But I realized that maybe I'm breaking people's boundaries where like when I was younger, I wasn't necessarily asking them, do you have the space right now to hear this stuff? And now when I got older, I always started asking people like, hey, do you have the space to like to converse about this. It might not be like the best thing you've heard all year. It might not be the best conversations you've had, but like, this is where I'm at. This is what I'd like to talk about. Like, so I try to at least, as much as I can, like, tell people, like, do you have space for this? Because I feel like when I look back, like, it's great that you bring up the boundaries thing, because like, if you look at, I know it's not about other people, it's about you.
Yeah.
But you realize that you might be breaking other people's boundaries.
And I mean, it's happened in the past, right? Like I said, and I like the fact that you're bringing up about asking people that question, because one of the things I want to talk about was, like, it's sometimes people do impose into your boundaries, or they'll touch subjects that you might not be comfortable about. So I like that you're respectful towards them and their boundaries. Like, I'll give you a very straight example. Someone asking you, hey, what's your salary? How much do you make? Are you comfortable sharing that number with someone?
Yeah.
You are.
Yeah. Like, but that
someone that works with you in your company.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like that. See, that's the thing, right? We all have, like, it's important to know everyone has different boundaries.
Like, when I get asked that question, I always get uneasy. I'm like, well, like, then it's awkward, because then if your number's higher than them, they feel bad. And then if your number is lower than them, you feel bad.
Yeah.
You know, so like that, but I'm just going back to say that's also like setting a boundary, is like, what information are you willing to share?
Exactly.
Which kind of goes back to you saying, hey, do you have the space to listen to it? Right? It's like about asking that person. It's like, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like it's hard to answer these questions.
Sorry. I was like, what happened? Yeah. But what do you mean answer these questions? Like, if someone were to ask you,
do you want kids? That could be a very iffy question. What if someone wants kids, but they can't have kids? How do they answer that one to you?
That's a good one.
Right? You know what I mean? So it's like sometimes things that we might not even think of as someone setting a boundary, or someone might not be comfortable, whatever. We don't think like that, because maybe I can have kids, and I'm not thinking that someone's reality might be that they can't and that they want kids. So then you're putting them in an awkward spot. So
that's a good one, because there's a lot of, like, right, with these questions, right? Like you said, you asked me, are you comfortable sharing salary? My first answer, yeah.
That's it.
I don't care.
And that's a perfect example of having two different
boundaries. Right? I didn't even think twice. I was like, yeah, sure. Like, you want to know my salary? I'll tell you my salary. Like, it's just, nothing crazy, but you know what I mean? So it's when I think about boundaries, I'm always trying to think like, oh yeah, like there's definitely times where I'm not going to use that word, but I mean, I'll stick to conflict. I was going to use another word that sounds a bit harsh, but but conflict people's boundaries, because it's like, but it's always the intention behind it, right? Like, you're not coming with bad intentions. It's like, I see life this way, you see life that way. And like right now I realize that, the way you are setting your boundaries, I am conflicting with them. But when I want to bring back the conversations towards like ourselves. Yeah. Because you talked about boundaries are about you, not about other people.
Yes.
Boundaries are like promises you make to yourself.
Yes.
So every time you break a promise, every time you don't enforce your boundary, you're basically breaking the promise that you're making to yourself.
I like that, yeah.
So because I think a lot about, like, life is about building that trust with yourself, right? As much as we always focus on building relationships and trust with other people, or like keeping our promises to other people, but oftentimes we never keep promises to ourselves.
It's true, eh?
Like, I don't know why we just like always feel the need, like, oh, I'll put the promise I made to someone before the promise I made to myself. And so that's why when earlier you were talking about it, I was like, oh, the first thing that came to my mind was people pleasing.
Yeah.
So that's all that really comes to my mind when I think about boundaries.
It's such a good point. And I feel like I can really identify to what you're saying. Like, if I make a commitment to someone and say, I will do this or I will whatever, there's no way I'm breaking that.
Yeah, right.
And if I will break it, I'm going to talk to a person and say, listen, finally I said this, it's going to be this instead. You know,
or I'll feel really bad about it.
Or exactly. And, but to your point, when it's like I'm not respecting myself in a certain way, it kind of goes like to the wayside. It's like,
yeah, right.
It's not a big deal.
It's just like when so many people, I hear even for myself sometimes, I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
And then you don't do it tomorrow. But I feel like every time you say I'll do it tomorrow, you're basically breaking that trust with yourself to the point that every time you say it again, I'll do it tomorrow, you know that like you can't trust yourself.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
You know what I mean?
You're just saying it out of principle to make yourself feel better, but you know it's not really going to happen.
It's like if you keep breaking promises or lying to people, like at one point, nothing you say will have any value.
Right.
Right?
Totally.
And at least for myself, when I think about that, I know that there's certain there's certain times in the past where like, oh, I couldn't come through on things that I agreed with people, and like I'd feel really, really bad about them.
Yeah.
But then like, oh yeah, I really wanted to help you with this, but then I said I'd help them and then I couldn't help them, and then things happen. But when I think about my own promises, I never feel bad about them.
Yeah, it's true. It's like no remorse.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, it's fine. But when it's someone else, I feel like, oh man, like I feel so
it's the end
bad.
of the world. Like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I didn't keep my word.
Exactly.
Or whatever it is. Yeah, you're right. I can identify to that 100%.
But like, yeah, I feel like the boundaries that you have are like for yourself, but you can set boundaries with yourself.
It's so true. That's why I think it's important. I think it's becoming aware of boundaries and boundary setting and how important they are. And I think on that topic, let's just be very clear here. It's not just boundaries with other people. Okay.
Yeah.
You can set boundaries with yourself, number one, but you can also set boundaries with inanimate objects. For example.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
Your phone.
Ooh.
Set a boundary with your
Yes.
phone. Okay.
Yeah,
That's one that I have no problem actually trying to set that boundary because I don't need to please my phone, right, Jake? If we go back to that theory, which actually could be very valid. But I have a boundary now that, hey, when I wake up in the morning, the boundary is with my phone. I do not check my phone for the first hour I wake up. That's a boundary.
Yeah. Well, I think what most people are probably like dying to know is like, how do you enforce the boundary with your phone? Like I'd say if you're talking about objects, like I'd say the phone is the hardest one to keep your word on. You're like, I know I shouldn't, let's say an hour, 30 minutes before bed, I shouldn't be on my phone.
Yeah.
First thing in the morning, I shouldn't be checking my phone. I shouldn't be scrolling. I shouldn't be that, but how do you enforce that?
It's a very good question. And I think it comes back to something that I've heard many times before, which is, I don't know, maybe you've heard this, but it's, or maybe not. A lot of people say like, when you're talking about like productivity experts and focus experts, things like that.
Yeah.
Focus experts, not a real term.
Focus expert.
People who help you focus in life and minimize your distractions. They'll say you should never charge your phone in your room where you sleep. Okay. And I think that's something that's helped me because out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
When I wake up in the morning, if my phone is not next to me, then my first thought is not going to be to check my phone. Maybe it will be in the first few days, but it's all about habit too,
That's
right?
a good point.
So the beginning is going to be hard, the first few days, whatever you're used to it. You got to break that habit. You kind of, like we spoke in the last episode, you have to unlearn a habit, right?
100%.
So it's tough at first, but it's also about, I'm not touching my phone and just sitting in my bed and just looking at the ceiling. You know what I mean? Then it would be hard because I'd be like, oh my God, where's my phone? I need to get my phone.
Yeah.
But I'm not touching my phone because instead I'm going to do my morning routine and then I'm going to take my book and I'm going to read for an hour. So I'm kind of changing the habit with changing that behavior with another behavior, which makes it easier to reinforce that boundary.
Yes, I love that. The first thing that comes to my mind is just like, when you have to identify when you go and use your phone or when you go and when do you want to go on, I don't know, like you want to go out or do things or like, it's usually for me when I'm like avoiding the work I need to do.
Yes, 100%.
When I'm so immersed in like, let's say making reels, making videos, which is what I love doing. I'm really not worrying about anything else.
100%.
I'm not worried about checking my phone.
100%.
I'm not worried about what everyone else is doing. So like, I think when I said in last episode, like find your why, I feel like when you're satisfying your why and answering that question, I feel like you have less, you don't have as much of a need to go and get that dopamine.
I was literally going in that direction, but instead of find your why, I was going to say find your flow. The research, like the book that I was just reading, it says about when you find your flow and you're in the flow, in the zone could be another way. Finding your why, workout, like it all means the same thing.
Is that what the flow state is? Like when you're in flow state?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's exactly it. And it's like you don't need to basically, go towards those distractions because you're so focused, you're so into what you're doing that you don't need those external factors. And I want to share a fun fact with you actually, also from the book I referenced in the last episode, The Stolen Focus by Joanne Harris, I think his name is. I'm curious to actually, I'm not going to tell you, I'm going to ask you the question.
Okay.
In a 24-hour period.
Yeah.
Okay. Not in a day, like, morning to night, like 24 hours.
Yeah, 24 hours.
How many times do we pick up our phone on average?
I have to give a number?
Yeah, a number.
24-hour period?
I'm glad you're pausing because this is giving everyone the time to come up with a number themselves too.
50.
What?
50 times you pick up your phone.
50, Jake. That's like 1%. It is over 2,000 times. Yeah.
No.
Listen,
I pick up my phone.
I was also shocked.
2,000 times.
I think it's 2,400. I'll have to get the exact number. I have it in my notes somewhere. Okay.
That's actually.
If I can find it very quickly, for those of you, I'm not being disrespectful. If you're looking, I'm like on my phone. Okay.
That makes me feel sad about myself.
1 second.
2,000 times?
We touch our phones 2,617 times every 24 hours. Come at me, everyone. Come at me. I'm going to fact check this because now I'm like doubting myself.
This is from the book?
This is from the book. Stolen Focus. I'm confirming the name is Johann Hari. My bad. I was saying Harris. It's Harry. Yeah.
2,600 times.
Okay.
Right.
Exactly. So how many people
doing
are avoiding what they want to do today?
Oh my God. Okay, but like how? Oh, I have so many questions about how that number came about.
Me too.
But
I actually am gonna do a little bit more research on it because I'm very curious. Because I also saw the number and I was like, get out of here. So like, is it just me that like without even realizing, I'm constantly taking my phone? Look, like I just took my phone. You know, I just took it again.
Yeah, that's true. But that I even accounted for that in my number. I was like, okay, let me think. All the like miscellaneous times I just grab it. I'm like, okay, let's do 50. And I felt like I was going way overboard.
Oh my God.
2,600 times.
Over 2,600.
Wow, that's scary.
On average. It's scary.
That's scary.
So that's why it's like setting boundaries with the phone for me is a big one, even before I read that number. And after I read that number, I was like, okay, no, I really need to set boundaries with my phone.
But I think for me, like what you said about the flow state, like I think life is all about finding your flow state.
Yes.
If you find flow state, you realize that like you'll be able to balance everything out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You know, everything in moderation is great, right? So like it's not to say to never use your phone.
Exactly. No.
But like when you're really fulfilling like and finding your flow state, I think that all those things become way easier.
100%.
Because if you're not in flow state, or if you're not like, you know, doing the things that really, you know, that you want to do, how I really don't see how you can like put your phone aside.
I know it's tough. And another thing that I do like to set the boundaries, just if we go back to that, to give some maybe inspiration to people, because I do feel like I've really worked on this one, and I feel like I'm getting to a good place with it.
Yeah.
My phone, if I show people here, okay, if you're looking at my phone, you can see my screen is black. Okay, you could see it.
Yeah.
Okay, that means that my phone is on sleep mode, and it's on there all day. All day, all night.
Because the screen's black?
Yeah, because the screen's black. It means I have a setting on that says sleep is on. Okay. If you're watching us, you could see it.
If you have an emergency, don't call her.
So I accept calls. Okay, so calls do come through, but nothing else does.
Okay.
Because even if I'm in my state of flow and someone texts me, I'm gonna get that the vibration or whatever. I'm still going to get distracted.
You're gonna check.
Curiosity kills the cat. I'm still gonna check.
Yeah.
So by having it, and it could be a whole other conversation because this is like a productivity thing of mine. It's about letting notification I'm gonna take back a second. I'm getting too excited here. I love talking about these things. When you leave your phone on, okay, you're basically letting other people control your state of focus, right? Because you cannot control when someone's gonna send you a message. You have no idea when the message is gonna come, right?
Yeah.
So the whole thing about keeping my phone on sleep mode is that I control when I want to be distracted. I control when I want to look at the notification. So someone could have texted me 5 minutes ago, but because I was working on something, and my phone was on do not disturb or sleep mode, I did not get the notification. But when I'm done whatever I'm working on, or I'm ready to take a break, then I'm going to check my phone, and then I'll see the notification. But it's me that controlled that and the timing that happened.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good one.
So that's another tip, and that's a way I set a boundary with my phone. Is if my phone is going to be near me, it will be in sleep mode, but I will allow calls, because I feel like calls in this day and age, people don't really call each other. So if I'm getting a phone call, anyways, in my life, if I'm getting a phone call, it's because it's probably an emergency or like something more important.
You call someone, people don't pick up, or it's like if you ring at a door, it's like weird, right? If you knock on somemeone's door, it's like, what are you doing?
That's exactly it. So I feel like that's something I do, and it's helped me tremendously. So it's not about not even having my phone next to me all the time. It's about having it there, but having the notifications off.
Those are good tips. It's like, I feel like this is like tips where, especially when it comes to the phone, where like as if I would give someone like dating advice. Yeah. And like they would take it, but they wouldn't. You know what I mean? Like they should take it, but they shouldn't. You know, like,
this is easy to implement. And with a touch of a button, you can.
It depends. It
turn
depends what relationship
but
you have with
yeah,
your phone, right?
exactly.
Like I said, it's like, can you say that you're in flow state in your, like, have you achieved flow state?
I'm not constantly in flow
Yeah,
state,
but like,
but yes, I could say that there's certain times, like when, let's say I'm preparing for these episodes, like for the podcast, I'm in flow state 100%. Or like, you know, and I'm still working on these personal projects. Like Jake has mentioned, it's Jacob's World. So I don't know by the time this episode comes out if it'll be out there, but I'm also working on things with my website and, you know, sharing productivity tips and sharing things like that. So I won't shout out my website yet because who knows if things will be posted by the time this comes out. But when I'm working on those kinds of things, I also feel that state of flow.
Okay. And that's when you feel like the least amount of distraction in your life. Like at those moments. Yeah.
And even when I'm working, I have to say, like, I really like my job. I really like what I do. And when I'm working, I feel like I'm in a state of flow. Yeah.
That's good.
I know, right? I feel like it's
that's like the goal, right? Just to like achieve that state of flow, right? I feel for myself, every time I found that I'm not in flow state, that's when I like navigate to all these like 100%. Instant dopamine 100%. Sources, like my phone, whatever.
Exactly.
Even like to the extreme. I know that, let's say if you go like on like dating apps.
Yeah.
I know that like I was never in flow state when I went on dating apps. Never. I wasn't even close to flow state. You know what I mean? So like it's good that like, you know, you're able to be aware of these things.
Totally.
Like when you're like, okay, now I know I'm deviating because I'm trying to avoid something. You know, usually that's what it is, right? When you're not like doing the thing, it's like, it's hard. The process is tough. So like I want to avoid through the instant scrolling. It's so satisfying. You just like keep scrolling and it's like, damn, like 2 hours went by.
I know. It's tough sometimes to get out of it. But to close out this episode, I just want to give some people some inspiration on some boundaries that they can set, let's say. So the phone we spoke about in detail, setting boundaries with yourself. So that could be around a self-care routine. Like I'm going to take a bath, you know, whatever, like, you know, making the time for yourself. Exercising, so carving out time for exercise and saying, you know what, I will not engage in this because I will engage in exercise instead, you know, and taking the time for it. So let's say, I don't know, let's say someone invites you to go to a gathering. Well, then if you're putting a boundary with yourself, it's like, you know what, I didn't do my exercise for today. Exercise is very important for me. So I'm not going to go to that outing because I'm going to exercise instead. So that's another one.
A good one.
Reading time, spending time alone, implementing a morning routine, for example. With your social life, you know, let's say sometimes my boyfriend's like, hey, let's go here. And I'm like, you know what? Like, again, kind of ties in with self-care. Like you can go, I'm going to stay back on this one because I have other things I want to do.
That's a big one.
Things like that. Saying no is also like a boundary that you can set. Easier said than done.
I think all these are easier said than done, but like,
of course,
you know,
all of them. And it's one step at a time, right?
Yeah.
Tomorrow, don't go and say, okay, these are all my boundaries 1 to 10 and let's go. You know, I think implement them slowly but surely. And
I think number one is awareness.
Exactly.
100% all the time.
Totally.
Like, if you're aware that, I should be setting certain boundaries, that I'm not setting any boundaries, then don't think you're going to set all these boundaries and like life's going to be great.
No, exactly.
So yeah, honestly, I'm glad we dove into deeper into boundaries because like you learn so much through, even if by myself realizing that I wasn't respecting other people's boundaries.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, who knows? Maybe my issue with setting boundaries is I want to be a people pleaser. So thank you for that. I will dive into that. And to your point on awareness, hopefully we were able to shed some awareness and bring some awareness to this topic. And hopefully we can inspire our awesome viewers and listeners to start setting some boundaries. So let us know if you start setting some boundaries. We'd love to hear them, and keep us posted on your progress. If you've had difficulty or not, we'd love to hear about your experiences.
Yeah. See you in the next one.
Awesome.
The next one's going to be a good episode about...
What's it about? I forgot. What's it about?
You don't know?
Overcoming self-doubt and having confidence in yourself.
That's going to be
good to have the notes.
I'm telling you, that's going to be my favorite one.
Amazing. I'm excited. Stay tuned.
All right.
Bye.